Hello, friends, and welcome. I'm Sarah Liz, and I am back with two easy, cheesy cards for you today. I love these so much. We're going to start by stenciling a background. I'm using the cheesy stencil from Trinity Stamps. It's a 6x6 stencil, and I have a piece of yellow cardstock that is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And I'm just going all over with an even wash of color. So this is an ink that's in the yellow family, but it has just ever so slightly a hint of orange to it, like a dark yellow with a hint of orange. My blending buddies make that wash of color pretty easy, but I know that this ink is almost the same color as my cardstock. So I went over everything twice, and I'm going to peel it back just a peek, make sure it's really showing up. Then I'm going to come in with a light orange. I think it's a melon color. I think it's called melon. And so just that hint of orange, that hint of darkness without actually adding any gray to it to create the illusion of depth and dimension and a very cheesy background instead of a polka dotted background. And that will finish up one of our 2 card panels. So we're essentially creating 2-for-1 backgrounds. And so we're going to make a second one out of this polka dot background stamp, also from Trinity. And it is a very fine dotted background. It's great for so many different things. I'm really working on cards that can work for the men in our lives, right? So in order to keep this from feeling like a feminine polka dotty background, because I always need more cards for dudes, I'm coming all over some pale blue cardstock, just an A2 panel, with a light blue ink first, and then we're going to create a gradient out of it. And I think as soon as you start adding it as a textural element and not just a pattern, we really get something that can work for lots and lots of different people. That second ink is pretty dark, so I'm using my blending buddy and coming right along where that darker ink ends to soften it. You can even see it through my Misty. It softens as you get to the middle of the page, and that's it, right? I stamped twice, I have this great background, and we're gonna use the Emergency Card Essentials die set number 1 to cut both of them out. That piece is about 4 by 5 1/4, and so it's great to put on an A2 matte layer, and we're gonna work on one of the cards at a time. I like to tape my 2 pieces together and then flip them over. It helps me to make sure that I'm getting everything centered and not just eyeballing one piece of it. I've done it before and ended up with like the second piece has a very short margin on one of those short ends. So here we go. I can see the whole thing at the same time. That's just some highlighter tape, like a temporary tape that I'm going to peel off once it's glued down. I did that to both panels, and then we can grab our extra cheesy little guys. So I cut and colored a bunch of these. You could use any of your favorite stamp sets for a layout like this, but these little cheesy dudes just crack me up. So I'm going to make like a charcuterie board on one of them, and then I'm going to use this like birthday balloon cheesy guy on the other. He's really small, so I wanted to make sure I knew what I was doing on both cards before I started gluing things down. These are layouts that you can use for all kinds of different stamps or die cuts. For this one, I really like using it for larger images, right? I have that charcuterie board and the 2 cheeses, and they fit there really nicely. And from here, we're working on a sentiment. So there is a stamp set full of cheesy puns. It's called the Brie-lliant Sentiments, like Brie-lliant Sentiments. And we're going to use, just in case so you didn't know, you're the greatest, Gratest. And I am stamping those with some Versamark ink on a darker teal cardstock. This matches that background that we have in the A2 for both of our cards. I'll add a little bit of white embossing powder and then heat that up. I go very quickly. I keep an eye on it and I keep my gun moving. My white embossing powder, I find, has a tendency to melt into the cardstock if I'm not really careful. So I'm always just really quick with it. There are not coordinating dies for the sentiment. Sometimes Trinity releases little bubble cut sentiment dies, but this one doesn't have them. Totally fine by me. There are 2 sentiment strip dies in Emergency Card Essentials number 1. They just fit. So I cut them out of just some scratch paper first to line everything up and make sure I was going to get my sentiment like all the way on there. And I like the rounded edge that I get on the short sides too. So I cut it once and then I just move that die down and I pop it in like a little puzzle piece. And I can make it look like this die was custom made to go around that sentiment. So these are about 1/4 inch. There's another die in the set that is 3/8 of an inch. That's the perfect matte layer for sentiments like this. And we'll use that too. But I cannot not add a die cut word as well. There's a new Simply Sentimental set. Trinity has tons of these where it's the same word and lots of different fonts and sizes, and then there's sub-sentiments for it. So this one, I'm using the word friend from the die cuts, but you could stamp it instead. And then the die, the shadow die for this guy will fit around that stamp. I put rip and stick sheet behind it. That double-sided adhesive makes this super easy. They're just like stickers. I wanted to place the N first because it's got that little swoopy that goes down below it, and I didn't want it to overlap my cheeses, right? That would just be awful. So one sticker at a time, and I can use the line from where the cheese meets the polka dot to make sure that I'm getting everything straight. I remembered to not lose the dot on the I, which was magical. And I've left a little room at the top for my 2 strip sentiments. I'm going to add these on to 3/8 inch strips of silver cardstock that I again cut with that slightly larger strip die from the set. And these will be good to go. I played with a couple layouts here, like do I want them kind of at an angle, looking kind of goofy, but we're just going to keep them straight. Again, this layout is something you can use with lots and lots of different ideas and images. I love adding some kind of word die if I can, because I think it adds another textural element, right? So now we have pattern, we have the dimension from the friend, we have our colored and cut out images, we have our strip sentiments and the sort of glossy nature of that embossing powder. And this card is done. But we're going to work on card number 2, and I'm starting with the sentiment, and it says, "You've aged to perfection." And I'm going to stamp this one right onto the card. All right, so I'm just making sure that it's straight along that diagonal, and I'm going to stamp that just in some dark ink. I need something that's really going to stand out against that polka dotted background. It is on the lighter side of the polka dots as opposed to the darker side. I was really careful about that. I'm going to stamp this twice because the letters are so fine and detailed, and I wanted to make sure that they're not going to get squished. I'm not pressing too hard. So a couple of times we'll make sure that it's nice and crisp and dark black without me having to worry about something looking kind of lopsided and funky. So here you can see it. Even though we have that pattern, it's showing up beautifully. I have the scallop circle and the 2-inch circle from that same Emergency Card Essentials die set. I love this for small stamped images. I don't know about you. I like coloring, but I'm not fast at it. And so if I'm going to color an image, I don't want to have to color 10 images. And I wanted just this one little cheese, who's maybe my favorite from the set, to be able to take like center stage on this card, and putting it inside of a scallop circle or something, some other shape that makes him bigger allows him to do that. If you're a clean and simple kind of card maker, then you might be done. But I can't help myself. I just keep adding things. And so I wanted to add some embellishments without adding glitter. But I think shine still works on a masculine card. So these are blue, but they're clear, like glass almost. And then there's a little metallic piece on the inside, just a little pop of shine and dimension. I thought I was done, but in the end, I'm adding on a little strip of red. So this coordinates really brilliantly with the other card as well. And then it is finished too. My friends, I hope you're inspired by this. I hope this gives you some layout ideas. I appreciate you spending your time with me, and I will see you next time.